Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Smart podcast. We're diving deep today into boosting your English skills.
That's right. We'll be sharing tips and strategies, exploring different approaches, really getting into how to speak smarter no matter where you are in your language journey.
Yeah, whether you're just starting out or you're already pretty fluent.
There's always room to grow and find new ways to express yourself.
It's like going on an adventure. Each step takes you closer to fluency.
Like any adventure, you need a map.
Okay.
So before we get into specific techniques, let's talk about those English proficiency levels.
English proficiency levels. What are those exactly? And why are they important?
Basically, they're a way to measure how well you understand and use English. You can think of it like a ladder.
Oh, I see.
Each rung represents a different level of fluency.
So you could be on the first few rungs as a beginner.
Right.
Then you work your way up as you become more comfortable and proficient.
Exactly.
But it's not about racing to the top, is it?
Not at all. It's about knowing where you are now and setting realistic goals for improvement.
And enjoying the process.
Absolutely. The journey is just as important as the destination.
I love that. It's all about embracing the learning process, celebrating those small victories along the way, which brings us to the foundation of any language, really.
Right.
Vocabulary. The more words you know.
The better you can express yourself.
But building vocabulary can feel overwhelming sometimes. Like, where do you even begin?
It can be, for sure, but it doesn't have to be. You know, one surprisingly effective technique I found is reading children's books.
Really? Children's books? I wouldn't have thought of that.
I know, right? It might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But they use simpler language and have engaging stories, makes it easier to learn new words and see how they're used.
I think a gentle introduction to new vocabulary. You're not overwhelmed.
Exactly.
I'm already thinking of all the classic children's books I could revisit.
Exactly. And don't forget the power of repetition. The more you see a word, the better you'll remember it.
So reading those familiar stories, even if they seem simple,
Can really help.
So, besides children's books, what are some other fun and practical ways to expand your vocabulary?
Well, think about your everyday routine.
Okay.
You can label things around your house with their English names.
Ah, I like that. It's like turning your home into a language learning zone.
Exactly. Constantly surrounded by new words.
I could label the fridge, the TV, even my toothbrush. Makes it fun too.
Absolutely. You can even use flashcards.
Oh yeah, flashcards, classic technique. Write down the word on one side, the definition on the other.
Exactly. And review them regularly. It works.
It's like those vocabulary quizzes we used to have in school, but without the test anxiety.
Right.
And of course, we can't forget about technology.
Oh, absolutely.
There are so many amazing apps and websites these days that can help with vocabulary.
Yeah, there are tons. Apps like Duolingo, Babbel, they make it fun and interactive. And then you've got websites like BBC Learning English, ESL Library, so many resources.
It's incredible how accessible technology has made language learning, though it can be a little overwhelming with so many choices.
That's true. Too many options sometimes.
Where do you even begin?
I'd say start with one or two that appeal to you and see how it goes. You can always try others later on.
Good advice. It's about finding what works best for you.
Yeah.
And while we're on the topic of technology,
Yeah.
social media can play a role too, right?
Absolutely. It's a fantastic way to connect with other learners or even native speakers.
You could join Facebook groups for English learners or find a language partner on an app, right?
Exactly. It's like having a global network of people who are passionate about language.
And it's a more casual and relaxed way to practice.
Right.
You don't feel the pressure to be perfect all the time.
For sure.
Okay, so we've talked about vocabulary. But what about grammar?
Ah, yes. Grammar.
It's often seen as the more challenging part of language learning. Can be a bit intimidating.
It can be.
What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with it?
Honestly, don't be afraid to start with the basics. Focus on those fundamental building blocks. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs.
Right, get those down first.
Exactly. Once you have a solid grasp of those, then you can move on to the more complex rules.
It's like building a house.
Yeah,
You need a good foundation before you can add the walls and the roof.
I like that analogy. Very true. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes. It's all part of the learning process.
Mistakes are opportunities. I've heard we learn more from our mistakes than from our successes.
It's true. They're like stepping stones on the path to fluency.
And if you need help, don't be afraid to ask.
Exactly. There are tons of resources out there. Grammar books, websites, tutors, you name it.
It's like having a support system for your language journey.
Exactly. And speaking of support systems,
Yeah.
Finding a community of other language learners can make a big difference.
I bet. Surrounding yourself with people who understand what you're going through.
It's so motivating, encouraging, and it reminds you that you're not alone on this journey.
Where would you suggest someone find this kind of community?
There are a bunch of ways. You could join a local language exchange group or participate in online forums, social media groups. Even start your own study group with friends or classmates.
Those are great ideas.
Yes.
So many options.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about real-world immersion.
Yes. Immersion.
It's about using English in actual situations, stepping outside your comfort zone, ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, making small talk. Can be scary for some people, though.
I get that. But remember, everybody makes mistakes, especially when learning a new language.
Right, and those mistakes can actually be really valuable.
Exactly. They're opportunities to learn and grow.
And the more you immerse yourself, the more comfortable you'll become.
Absolutely. It becomes more natural. Practice makes perfect, as they say.
This has been so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground already. Vocabulary, grammar, technology, immersion. It's amazing how much there is to explore when it comes to improving your English skills.
It is, isn't it?
And I'm sure there's even more to come.
Oh, definitely. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve into even more strategies for boosting your English. So many ways to speak smarter.
Can't wait.
Me neither. Welcome back to Speak Smart. Before we jump into those strategies I mentioned, let's talk about something that can trip up even experienced language learners.
What's that?
Pronunciation.
Oh, pronunciation. Yeah, that can be tough. Even when you know the words, getting those sounds just right, it's tricky.
It is. It's like there's the secret code you have to crack.
Exactly. So how do we crack the code?
Well, one of the best ways is to really immerse yourself in the sounds of the language.
So listening to native speakers, paying attention to how they form the sounds.
Exactly. How they shape their mouths, how they stress certain syllables, all of that.
And don't just listen passively, right?
Right. Try to mimic those sounds, even if you feel a little silly doing it.
I can picture it now, standing in front of the mirror, practicing those tricky sounds, trying to roll my R's.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
It's all about training your mouth to make those new sounds.
It's like a workout for your tongue.
Exactly. And another helpful tip. Record yourself speaking.
Ah, the recording trick. I've heard about that. Though I have to admit, I always cringe a little listening to my own voice.
I get it. But it can be really helpful. It lets you hear yourself from a different perspective.
And pinpoint those areas where you might need a little extra practice.
Exactly. You might notice you're stressing the wrong syllable or that a particular vowel sounds is a bit off. Once you know what to work on, you can really focus your practice.
It's like having a personal pronunciation coach. Now, you mentioned before that making mistakes is a natural part of the learning process.
Right.
And that's probably even more true when it comes to pronunciation, right?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to mispronounce a word. Don't let it stop you from speaking.
View it as a learning opportunity.
Exactly. And remember, even native speakers have different accents and dialects. There's no one right way to pronounce every word.
That's a good point. So it's really about finding a style that works for you and lets you communicate clearly.
Right. Now let's switch gears again and talk about something that's often overlooked in language learning.
Oh, what's that?
Cultural awareness.
Cultural awareness.
Ah.
How does that tie into improving your English skills?
Well, language and culture, they go hand in hand. Understanding the cultural context can really help you communicate better and avoid misunderstandings.
So it's not just about memorizing words and grammar rules.
Right. It's also about understanding the customs and traditions and values of English-speaking cultures.
It's like you're not just learning a language, you're learning about a whole way of life.
Exactly.
And I imagine that can make the learning process more enjoyable too, right?
Absolutely. It adds a whole new layer of richness to the experience.
You know, one thing I've always found fascinating is the impact language learning can have on your brain.
Oh yeah, there's some really interesting research on that.
Have you looked into that at all?
I have. Studies show that learning a new language can actually rewire your brain, leads to all sorts of cognitive benefits.
Wow. So it's not just about being able to communicate in another language.
No, it actually makes you smarter, improves your memory, attention, even your ability to multitask.
That's incredible. It's like a mental workout.
It is. And the benefits go beyond the cognitive stuff, too.
Really?
It can broaden your horizons, increase your cultural understanding, boost your confidence.
It's like opening up a whole new world.
Exactly. Speaking of broadening your horizons, let's talk about the role of travel in language learning.
Travel. Nothing beats being immersed in a new culture and hearing the language all around you.
Right. It takes your learning to a whole new level. When you're surrounded by the language, you have to use it. That's when the real learning happens.
But what if someone can't just hop on a plane and fly to an English-speaking country?
That's okay. There are still ways to create those immersive experiences right at home.
Oh, how so?
You can watch English movies and TV shows, listen to music and podcasts, even join online communities where English is the main language.
Like building your own little English-speaking world.
Exactly. And don't underestimate those little everyday interactions. Ordering coffee in English, chatting with a tourist, even just thinking to yourself in English, all those little things add up.
It's about making English a regular part of your life.
Exactly. Which brings us to another important point, setting realistic goals and creating a consistent learning routine.
I love that. It's about breaking down those big, ambitious goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly. Don't try to do too much at once. Start small. Learn a few new words each day. Listen to a short English podcast.
And as you get more comfortable, you can gradually do more.
Exactly. It's like training for a marathon. You wouldn't try to run 26 miles on your first day, right? You'd start small and gradually build up your endurance.
I love that analogy. And just as important as setting goals
is being consistent. Try to set aside some time each day for English practice, even if it's just for 15 minutes.
Make it a habit, like brushing your teeth.
Exactly. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel, and the more progress you'll make.
This has been so inspiring. Pronunciation, cultural awareness, the benefits for your brain, creating a routine, so much to think about.
It is, isn't it?
And I'm sure there's even more to explore.
Oh, yeah. In the last part of our deep dive, we'll talk about some extra resources and strategies that can help you on your English learning journey. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Speak Smart. We've covered so much already, all sorts of ways to boost your English skills. In this last part of our deep dive, I'm excited to hear if you have any more tips, resources or strategies that you think would be especially helpful for our listeners.
Well, we talked a bit about technology earlier, but there's a whole world of language learning apps and websites out there.
Oh, I know. It can feel overwhelming. So many choices. Which ones are actually worth trying?
Yeah, it can be tough to sift through them all. Well, let's see. If you're looking for something structured, comprehensive, you've got apps like Duolingo and Babbel, gamified lessons, personalized feedback. They're great for building that foundation in grammar and vocabulary.
Yeah, I've heard good things about those. What if someone's more interested in actually speaking, practicing their conversational skills?
For that, you've got apps like HelloTalk and Tandem. They connect you with native speakers for language exchange.
Oh, that's cool. So you can practice with someone in real time.
Exactly. Like having a virtual pen pal who can help you with real-life communication.
I love that. Any websites you'd recommend?
Absolutely. Websites like BBC Learning English, Voice of America, they're fantastic resources. News articles, videos, podcasts, grammar lessons, and they're all free.
Free is always a bonus. So much out there for every learning style and budget. What about books? Do those still have a place, with all the digital stuff?
Of course. Books are still a wonderful resource for language learning. And I'm not just talking about textbooks. Reading novels, biographies, even cookbooks in English can be so helpful.
It's like immersing yourself in the language. But how do you choose the right books? Especially if you're just starting out.
Start with what you enjoy. It could be a children's book, a graphic novel, whatever sparks your interest. Don't be afraid to use a dictionary or look things up online. And remember, the goal is to enjoy reading, not to understand every single word.
So true. Find that balance between challenge and enjoyment. One thing we haven't talked much about is the emotional side of language learning.
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes.
It can be a roller coaster.
It is. You have those moments of excitement when you're making progress, but then there are times when you feel frustrated, discouraged. It's important to remember that those feelings are normal, and you're not alone.
Yeah, everyone goes through those ups and downs. What can someone do when they hit those bumps in the road?
First of all, be kind to yourself. Learning a new language takes time and effort. Mistakes are going to happen. You're going to feel frustrated sometimes. That's okay.
It's so easy to compare ourselves to others and feel like we're not good enough, especially with social media these days.
It is. But everyone learns at their own pace.
And it's not always a straight line up, right?
Exactly. There are going to be times when you feel like you're making huge leaps and other times when you feel stuck. It's all part of the process.
So how do you stay motivated? Keep going even when it feels hard.
Setting realistic goals is key, and celebrating those small victories along the way. Did you finally master a tricky grammar rule? Give yourself a pat on the back. Did you have a conversation in English and actually understand what was going on? That's awesome. Celebrate those wins.
It's so important to acknowledge those little successes. We tend to focus on what we haven't accomplished yet.
We do. But recognizing your progress, even those tiny steps, that's what keeps you going. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Connect with other learners, join a language exchange group, or find a tutor. They can offer guidance and encouragement when you need it most.
It's like having your own personal cheering squad. This has been an incredible conversation. Pronunciation tips, the cultural side of things, the benefits for your brain, setting goals. So much great advice.
It has been fun, hasn't it?
I feel so inspired to keep learning and exploring. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just remember that language learning is a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly exploring, discovering, and pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
And enjoying the ride. It's not about being perfect. It's about growth and transformation.
Exactly. Learning a new language opens up a whole world of possibilities. Connecting with people from different cultures, expanding your career options, who knows what doors it might open.
It's amazing to think about all the potential out there just waiting to be unlocked.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. This has been truly enlightening.
It's been my pleasure. I hope our listeners feel inspired to take their English to the next level.
To all our amazing listeners out there, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of English learning. Remember, fluency is within your reach. With dedication, persistence, and a little bit of fun, you can unlock the power of English and open up a world of opportunities. Keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep speaking smart. And thank you for listening to the Speak Smart podcast, and subscribe my channel, like the hit button,